Oh, je vais parler de literally the best TV show I've seen so far in 2024, and that is, of course, Shogun! I know I'm not early on this because the show has now been finished, so there will be spoilers in this very brief love fest of a review, I guess you can call it that. But really, I just wanted to gush about a show that pleasantly surprised and delighted me. Hey, XenPuck here. So, I don't know if I've made this common knowledge on this digital aspect of my life, but I am far from what anyone would call a weeb or japanophile, and the reason is simple, right? I am an actual first-generation immigrant from East Asia, and frankly, Japan has not made friends in that sphere of the world in the last century, because of World War II and so on, okay? I know, that is a long time ago, but the history of my people is long, therefore so is that cultural memory. Okay, still though, I can't say that I don't appreciate certain aspects of what Japan has produced. After all, I do still love video games and animation, even some of their food, okay? I only bring up all this pretext because today I want to gush about the show of Shogun, okay? And I want to make it clear that the setting of the show was actually, at least initially, kind of a detriment or hurdle for me to get over, okay? Because it is set in Japan, right? Rather than, a positive thing, okay? No, I haven't read the book, nor have I seen the original TV adaptation that apparently kicked off a wave of interest in that culture, at least in terms of the US. So this is just about the top things that I personally thought was awesome about this current iteration of the show, right? That has made this show possibly my favorite for quite some time now. Okay, anyway, if you enjoy some random rants from a dude with clearly no production skills, like, subscribe, share, comment, or whatever, okay? I'll be great regardless, because I just do these for funsies. Hit that bell icon. I still really don't know where that is, because I don't do that for other people's YouTube channels. I'm sorry, okay? Oh, by the way, there will be no visual stimuli, cool graphics in this video either, because I don't know how to make those. That's the reality. So point number one, attention to detail, okay? So the very first thing I noticed about the show is that whenever they're writing something, in written Japanese, what they're writing looks amazingly like Chinese script. And then I realized that this is actually period appropriate, okay? It is extra amazing because this detail, this visual fidelity detail about how the writing needed to be, period accurate for Japan, has zero effect on the mainly Western audience that it's aimed towards, right? It really only matters to Asian people who know the collective history of that region, of like the written word. Heck, I'll guess probably some Japanese people might not even know to what extent their written word has changed even in the last 500 years, right? I have read the same thing was being done about the spoken Japanese language as well, right? Basically that they had all the actors speak what's essentially the medieval Shakespearean version of Japanese, right? With, phrases that probably no one actually uses anymore, right? I love these details because they don't really have to do that for a show aimed at a Western audience, right? So what that tells me is that the showrunners really just have a love for the materials, right? They did the research and leaned on the side of authenticity, even when they're not forced to, by their studio overlords, right? Now, compared to this level of care against, I don't know, Starbucks cup showing in the last Game of Thrones, episodes, wow, this show is just, leaps and bounds beyond that, obviously, right? I would say it's got the tiger blood, winning tiger blood. That's right. Now, point number two, right? While there is an English-speaking dude, a Westerner, to provide some of that fish out of water perspective, right? To provide an audience stand-in, at its heart, this show, Shogun, isn't really about the white guy, okay? That's just kind of really interesting and refreshing to see from a Western production. Now, I get it, this show is a remake of the original TV adaptation, which was based on a novel. So I presume that old version also does the same job of not making the English-speaking guy the main character. I don't know, I haven't seen it, but in my mind, I'm comparing this show, Shogun, right, with movies like The Last Samurai, right? And this show just does a much more explicit job of pushing the Westerners to play a purely kind of ornamental and supporting role. I mean, personally, I generally like foreign movies with subtitles, okay, so I don't have a problem watching this show where like basically 90% of the dialogue is in subtitles, right? Not in the language of the main audience. But honestly, I'm just surprised that this has gotten made at all, okay? I even enjoy the bits and pieces that did surround the Englishman because he's basically having kind of like an immigrant experience of his own, right? So the sole main Western point of view had to shift towards the dominant culture being displayed on the show. And that is both, you know, totally reasonable, but also very rarely represented, right? I kept thinking to myself, so this show is really a great reason why representation is important, you know, in Hollywood. That's what people talk about. When they say representation, this show does it very well, right? It does make me now wish that there are more shows that shows the variety of views that can be presented. Not just with, like, you can't just stick in, like, oh, Japanese actors, but in American context. This is like a Western context, a very slow, you know, minimal Western context in a dominant Japanese perspective. And that is quite amazing and interesting and rare still in this day and age. Now finally, this last bit didn't really hit me until I finished the entirety of the show, right? And that is how the show, you know, ostensibly is about the succession of power during 17th century Japan, right? But Shogun manages to entirely avoid the very generic trope of like, let's end it all in a big Hollywood-style final battle, okay? I mean, don't get me wrong. There are quite a few short, terse, well-executed action sequences splattered throughout the various episodes. They are good enough by themselves that I have actually rewatched them just for the action sequences, right? But what they didn't forget is that this show is more about the head games and planning and the palace intrigue rather than who has the most formidable army or samurai or, I don't know, weapons technology, right? I admit, me personally, I also thought that maybe the finale will be a big battle. And it turns out that definitely did not happen. All they did was hint at the result of what such a battle would be, given all the machinations that led up to that point. And more importantly, the finale did a wonderful job of using one major character's impending death as sort of a safe space, I guess, for some other unlikely exposition from our real, you know, protagonist, which is the guy who's going to become Shogun, right? I absolutely love that. Okay, the wrap-up at the end of the series just felt unexpected in a show that was advertised as, you know, the next Game of Thrones, right? When you think Game of Thrones, you think big budget battles and dragons. Instead, Shogun ends it on contemplation and character revelations. What a breath of fresh air this was. I absolutely love this. So, at the end of the day, I gotta tell you, I mean, there are probably another handful of details that I could have ranted on positively about Shogun, right? I was sucked in right from the get-go, from episode 1, and the quality of each subsequent episode they never dipped, okay? Now, some people are wondering whether this show would get a sequel, right? For me, that's not really the right question, right? You know, if there was a sequel, I would totally watch it. But I also think the show as it exists right now has a perfectly well-formed bookend of an ending as well, right? I'm really having a hard time placing where this show is in my like all-time top 10 list. That's how good it is. It's been out barely a month and I've already watched it twice. Okay, completely. Now, I don't know. This is so far the show to beat in this year of 2024. It just gives me so much hope that this show can exist in the form that it does. Hey, who knows? If I get lucky, maybe they'll they give this kind of Shogun treatment to something from my home culture, right? One can dream, right? Oh my god, such a long shot, but who knows, right? Keep the faith. Anyway, cheers. A la prochaine.